My name is Jennifer Sheridan Plute. I'm a parent of a 4th grader at Jefferson Houston. I actually walk to school with my kid, and I love it. This decision does not impact my kid, but it impacts my community and my neighbors with very little kids or kids that are not here yet but are coming. I've been involved in the pre-K to 8 analysis process. I participated in a parent focus group and attended 2 PTA meetings where the various options were presented. I really was shocked when school board voted to convert Jefferson Houston to a middle school without further community discussion, especially when ACPS staff previously stated that the analysis would be informed by redistricting and no decision had been finalized. It is perplexing that despite wonderful communication efforts earlier in the process, that the final steps were hidden within the CIP work sessions, leaving the community with many outstanding questions, including busing, Title I status, after school programs, and no plans for the short-term middle school capacity issues. While I understand that the school board has limited funding and needs to make difficult decisions, it is vital that these decisions are thoroughly developed, informed by robust community engagement, which is one of the strategic goals of the Equity by All 2025, and with data that fully supports the decision you made. I hope that school board can get creative, finding new short-term and long-term solutions to solve middle school capacity issues, and that you don't dismantle an elementary school for no reason. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kathleen Sheehy.
I'm also here to speak about Jefferson Houston. ACPS leadership, including the school board, has crippled Jefferson Houston for years. And Jefferson Houston has finally begun to succeed, not because of district leadership, but in spite of it. Because teachers, parents, students, and the community have rallied around the school. And district leadership has done nothing to counter the horrible and incorrect reputation that Jefferson Houston has. My 2 children are getting an amazing education at Jefferson Houston. My daughter, Ava, had Miss Shelton for kindergarten last year, and I hope that she won't mind that I'm going to brag about her for a moment. I actually work in the field of education. I worked as a teacher and instructional coach in DC Public Schools. I was the 2008 DC Teacher of the Year. I currently work as a leader at a curriculum and assessment company. So I have had an opportunity to visit hundreds of classrooms across the country, across my career, and Ms. Shilton is simply one of the best teachers that I have ever met. Last year, her class had the highest kindergarten reading scores in the city. But you would never, ever know things like that from the way district leadership treats Jefferson Houston. Others have spoke about, and others are going to speak about, how the decision to turn Jefferson Houston into a middle school in 10 years does nothing to address the current ACPS middle school capacity issues, and actually exacerbates the elementary school capacity issues. And also to recklessly make this decision outside of the redistricting process without even a smidgen of a plan for what is going to happen to the JH elementary students is going to slowly ruin Jefferson Houston across the next 10 years before this ill-advised decision takes effect. District leadership already drove off our last principal, Dr. McCain, and the district hasn't put any effort at all into finding a permanent replacement for him. And what principal would want the job knowing that ultimately it's going nowhere because the school is closing? We're going to start bleeding teachers as well. What teacher is going to want to stay or come knowing that the school is closing? And families, knowing that the school is closing, won't want their children to start at Jefferson Houston. They'll move, they'll apply to the dual language program at Mount Vernon, or they'll send their kids to private school. You are literally driving families away from ACPS. So JH is going to slowly bleed out, and the education current students are receiving will suffer. The district has been crippling Jefferson Houston for years, and that needs to stop now. It is not too late for the board to actually come up with a solution that supports the current and future students of Jefferson Houston and ACPS.
Sarah Hughes.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Hughes, and I'm a parent of a kindergartner at Jefferson Houston, JH, with another future kindergartner starting in 2029. I'm new to the JH community, but I hope to be a member for at least the next 13 years. I'm here to voice my deep opposition regarding the school board's hasty decision to eliminate elementary education at JH, a Title I K-8 school, and the only IB program in the area. I have many concerns. I'm concerned about the accuracy and application of the data used to make the decision, data that speaks to the distribution problem rather than a capacity problem, data that doesn't even align with the district's timeline. I'm concerned about the ongoing failure to comply with current policies and procedures, such as continuing to allow optional transfers and failing to properly redistrict after a new construction. I'm concerned about the capitulation to whack-a-mole problem solving and a Band-Aid solutions. A middle school slated for construction in 2027 doesn't solve the identified issue of today. And the proposed increased use of busing, a system already plagued by shortages, rising costs, and delays, is a solution rife with problems. I could spend 3 minutes on any one of these concerns or more, but today I mostly want to talk about community. My husband and I admired the school art show hanging in the windows of JH long before we became parents. My daughter played on JH playgrounds long before she became a kindergartner. Our family excitedly anticipated joining the JH community years before we did. A vibrant community built with grit, intention, and love. A community built for years, overcoming challenges and setbacks, prevailing through unfair treatment. A community you see and hear today. Pardon me. Community is a precious, fragile thing, like a spider web. Community is strong and elastic, made of interwoven strands bound together with purpose. Like a spider web, community is essential to life, anchoring and sheltering. Like a spider web, community can be broken by carelessness. I'm asking you not to break this community carelessly. Don't break this community out of fear of changing your mind. Don't break this community in the name of the cheapest solution. Don't break this community in a time when community is what we need more than anything. Don't break this community. Thank you.
David Robbins.
Hello. My name is Dave Robbins, and I'm here with my wife, Katie, who's the treasurer of the Jefferson Houston PTA, and my daughter, Jane, who's a first grader at JH. I'm here to share my concerns regarding the proposed reconfiguration of Patrick Henry as an elementary school and Jefferson Houston as a middle school. I followed the K-8 analysis very closely last year. I went to meetings hosted by the central office and meetings hosted by the JH PTA. The engagement with our community stopped in November. At that final meeting, we were told the school board has not made a decision and that the decision will be made in collaboration with the redistricting process. That's the last time they met with us. In December, Dr. Finney plainly told this board there's not been engagement regarding this motion with our community. That should have been the end of this motion immediately. Instead, this school board passed the motion anyway. That's not what we expect from our leaders. Process problems aside, the model being proposed is also the wrong model for the future. It's not even the model that was recommended in this study. I've read this analysis repeatedly. The school board simply does not have the information that they need to ask for nearly $40 million of taxpayer money for this plan. Looking at the analysis, page 15 notes the study excluded looking at academic achievement, student impacts, demographics, transportation, Title I impacts, family impacts, neighborhood impacts, and busing. I just don't think that $40 million should be reserved for a project that hasn't studied these factors. The K-8 analysis didn't study what it would mean to eliminate elementary education in our neighborhood. It doesn't account for major redevelopment planned at Samuel Madden and Andrew Adkins, Braddock West, the power plant site in North Old Town. That area is growing. Does it make sense to take away the elementary school in a walkable, underserved, growing community? There's 2 elementary schools in Old Town. You all have proposed to eliminate the one that disproportionately serves our minority community. You've proposed to do this without analyzing how it would overcrowd the neighboring schools at Lyles Crouch and Naomi Brooks. Does it really make sense to spend $40 million on a model that just plays musical chairs between two buildings? This model results in fewer seats for the district, and it invests huge amounts of money in buildings that don't need financial investment. This is a new school board. This is the new city council. We have a new mayor. You guys can work together to make a thoughtful and forward-looking plan. If you ultimately decide this community needs to sacrifice for the greater good of the school system, I'm sure this community will do it. This community certainly understands sacrifice, but please do not ask them to do it
Thank
until you've
you
done the hard
very
work
much, Mr.
and
Robbins.
reach the conclusion that it's in the best interest of our staff and our students.
Mr. Robbins, thank you. Angela Cummings.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Angel Cummings. I am currently a parent of a child at St. Jefferson Houston in 7th grade, and I also have a daughter who will be entering kindergarten. At this time, I think the decision to turn Jefferson Houston into a full middle school is completely ridiculous and outrageous to me. This school has been in the neighborhood forever and a day, and me moving out here, I looked at the school as being close to my home and to my work. And this decision will highly affect families and communities from the future and then on. I don't see any plans of how this will help far as truancy issues and also transportation. At this time, I feel like the school already is suffering enough because we don't even have a leadership in the building to lead the school. The culture is currently off. I don't see nothing promising coming from this decision. As a parent right now, it makes my heart really sad for future families that's coming into this area, depending on that school to serve their children in an educational way. This vote was done without proper awareness to the community and me as a parent. I shouldn't have found out the way that I found out, and I feel like you all owe us a deep apology. At this time, this has really disturbed a lot of people in my neighborhood and community and friends and neighbors. We are stuck to try to figure out what is soon to come 5 years from now. As I stated before, if you all can't even provide us with a school with a proper leadership to help address culture situations, what is going to happen 5 years from now? What are teachers going to do? How do they feel comfortable working in a building that's soon to be done over? And where would the future children go? That is one of my biggest concerns, and thank you. Have a good night.
Aaron Probst.
Distinguished members of the school board, my name is Aaron Probst. I was born and raised in Fairfax, served in the military as a commissioned officer for 20 years, and I recently moved to Delray on October 29th from Germany. The opportunity to live in Delray was a goal of mine about a decade ago when I was first stationed here in DC. And I bought my house overseas, sight unseen, because Delray's different. It's special. It's a place of community where racial and economic diversity is considered a feature, not a bug. Now, I did have some trepidation. Jefferson Houston has a school score of 3 out of 10, and it is considered Title I, something I heard that was not desirable. I called my sister, who's a vice principal in Maryland, and she said, you need to visit the school. And I did. And what I found was there is an unbelievable energy from the teachers, the involved parents, and the students. It is an anchor, it is a propellant for our children's success. And what I learned is that Title I isn't some sort of scarlet letter that we have to now rush our children to a private school. Title I is critical. It provides access to better resources like free lunches, after-school programs. It provides technological resources. My daughter, she's 6. She's learning how to code. Now, I appreciate that you have hard problems. How do you deal with a middle school population that is over capacity right now? But I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't convert Jefferson Houston to a middle school and get rid of Title I funding. You don't treat low-income families and members of this community like trash that needs to be discarded. You don't bus students and abandon a school that works so hard to rebuild its reputation. And what I find so frustrating is that the solution you are trying to seek doesn't even solve the problem until 2032, and by that point, it shouldn't even be a problem. We need to solve middle school overcrowding now. Use trailers. It works. Thomas Jefferson High School, they have trailers. They have a 100% acceptance rate in schools. They have an average of 1520 SAT score. Now let's be clear. You didn't make a tough call, you made a bad one. And it's human nature to be defensive and dig into your positions. I'm sure you feel pressure to stay the course, to save face with the community and city council. But you save face by showing what true leadership is. You do not rush to failure. You take a tactical pause and you look at the data. Because the position you voted for isn't supported by data, community, or common sense. I fundamentally disagree with the premise that a $40 million Band-Aid solution is the best we can come up with. Do better.
Helen Morris. Helen Morris.
Good evening. My name's Helen Morris. I stand before you as a JH neighbor, a parent of a graduate of Jefferson Houston Elementary School who is now in college, and a member and vice chair of the school board that created the K-8 model in ACPS and advocated for and built the new Jefferson Houston as we know it and the new Patrick Henry. You know why I'm here. You placing the JH conversion to a middle school in the CIP is a policy decision. It is not a financial decision. You drew a line in the sand for the future. You have told the community that it's going to be a middle school. You can backtrack and say it's for planning, but when you put money before something, it's a policy decision, and most of you know that. You're hearing from families in my neighborhood that you didn't use the data before you in your decision. That data is available and has actually been analyzed by families at Jefferson Houston, and it shows significant holes in your process. You didn't communicate or engage collaboratively with the school community on this issue. These missteps are not a JH community issue. They're a leadership failure. JH was a purpose-built school designed by ACPS and the community to provide high-quality spaces for our students with significant special needs and to offer a beautiful, light-filled learning center for the students and families in our community who for 40 years went to school in a light-deprived, open classroom bunker. It is not lost on our community that what you propose will have the effect of busing some of our most needy and historically underserved students out of their community. Do you want to be that school board? The current Jefferson Houston cost over $40 million to construct. How is it cost effective to spend an additional $40 million to renovate it away from its purpose as a community school and not provide significantly more learning spaces for elementary and middle school? Solving important complex problems like capacity, school placement, and educational opportunities for students takes leadership. What I have seen here is mediocre management. ACPS students and communities need more learning spaces, not rearranged seats. The parameters you have used have boxed you into poor decision making. That doesn't mean there isn't a solution. It means you need to revisit what you think you know and think bolder. Removing Jefferson Houston as a community school is not the answer to your problems. The good news is that you have the opportunity to rethink your CIP request to City Council. You're hearing significant reasons that you should look at issues in larger context and come up with a better plan. I urge you to do so. I am confident the City Council would accept a revised budget that does not include renovating Jefferson Houston. Finally, as a former school board member, I highly value the autonomy of the school board and the schools
Ms.
to
Morris,
lead
I'm sorry. Your
the
time
school
has
system.
expired.
May I have permission as a former school board member? Oh, thank you very much.
Gina Baum.
Hi, I'm Gina Baum. I'm a JH neighbor, a parent of a former JH student, and the former Park and Rec chair. As usual, I am here to talk about the role of dutiful board members and that decisions have consequences. Unlike ACPS that operates in a vacuum, every other department in this city takes into consideration how best to use our resources to benefit ACPS and the community at large. For instance, Patrick Henry Rec Center was built smaller, not bigger, to serve an elementary school population in a small neighborhood. Now, you intend to invite half the city to a rec center that will be woefully inadequate. Please add $20 to $30 million to your projections to modify the rec center accordingly. Additionally, because Park and Rec plans 10 to 20 years out, unlike this body, there will be greater field wear and tear. So please add extra money for the field maintenance at these schools. I'm really at a loss. I don't understand how one substitutes their unqualified judgment for the judgment of the professionals' recommendations who said you need another middle school, not exchange 2 elementary schools when most are bursting at the seams. To the new school board members, run. Don't walk to the city attorney. And all of you, I spoke to the city attorney, and she said the closed doors meetings that is happening with this board, she would never recommend to another board. So get your ducks in a row. Every policy deliberation must take place in public, on the dais, unlike this decision made about Patrick Henry and Jefferson Houston. This body plays fast and loose with the rules and the laws. And as board members, you go behind closed doors to ask specific legal questions, to discuss a specific student matter, and to discuss a specific employee matter. I believe Abdel El-Nubi and Bill Campbell, when they found that policy was being made behind closed doors, would leave those meetings. I recommend you do it too. To Jefferson Houston parents in particular, it became evident to me that this body was developing a collective bargaining policy behind closed doors in the fall of '23. I will fill you in on a lawsuit I filed and subsequently dropped because I needed more legal support and advice that I think you can help with. I am convinced with this groundswell of public advocacy and increased scrutiny, this board is going to find itself in peril over its public meeting approach.
Thank you, Ms. Baum. Our next speaker is Sujata Mitra.
It's Sujata. Good evening, members of the school board and Superintendent Kay Wyatt. I'm Sujata Mitra. On December 19th, this board decided to eliminate the elementary program at Jefferson Houston, a walkable, majority-black, Title I neighborhood school, serving some of Alexandria's most vulnerable children. This decision uproots hundreds of students who rely on JH for critical resources like food pantries, tutoring, and Saturday school. It contradicts ACPS's redistricting principles of maintaining neighborhood schools and limiting bus time, forcing children to bus out of their community into schools miles away. The Alexandria Times published a rare editorial yesterday. Publisher Dunbar wrote, "Worse, parents and community members weren't alerted that a vote was taking place that night, so those opposed to the switch couldn't explain their position to the school board. Even more troubling, no one with Alexandria City Public Schools is taking responsibility for when the decision was made to eliminate the K-8 model. What message does this send to families who trusted ACPS's promises of equity and transparency? As the editorial noted, perhaps the most unforgivable part of this rushed decision is that it fails to address the very issue it claims to solve, middle school overcrowding. During the meeting, Dr. Hart admitted, we do not have a plan right now to address middle school capacity. How could such a significant vote happen without even a basic plan in place? The district's own analysis reveals this option displaces the most families, it minimally relieves middle school overcrowding, and it creates new overcrowding in elementary schools. Turning 1703 into a middle school is an option. It balances capacity across middle and elementary, avoids uprooting families, and meets future growth. But according to members of this board, it is ignored because of no fields. When the school board claims you can't use 1703 because of fields, but you can uproot hundreds of Black and low-income elementary children, I have a major problem with how this elected board thinks about equity. If this were a good plan, someone would proudly take responsibility for it. Instead, there's silence. I urge you to pull this decision out of the CIP budget. GH isn't just a school, It's a lifeline for families. This board has an opportunity to show humility, rebuild trust, and make decisions aligned with equity and thoughtful planning. Please don't let this rushed, flawed decision define your legacy. It's not too late to make it right.
Liz Bolton. Christian Bentley. Tomasia Cornicher. Oh, Miss Bentley.
I think they originally took me off the list because I get nervous when I talk in front of people. But seeing so many of my students here and my families here, I have to speak. My name is Beverly Shelton. I'm a teacher at Jefferson Houston, and my face might be familiar to you. You might be the person that I invited to my school as a leader, or you might be the person that I sat with at the PTA breakfast and talked about the trials and the love of working with kindergarten teachers. What I realize is that for many times before that this has happened, that when the district says they want to change something, they build focus groups, they have committees, they talk about how parents are involved and teachers, only to find out the decision was already made. My hope that it has not been. The reason I hope that is because we're in a neighborhood that if you bus children far away, you are cutting out their support system. They will not have transportation to go to the PTA meetings, after-school programs, teacher-parent conferences. And if a child is sick in the middle of the day, you expect them to go to some schools, because I take public transportation, that does not have public transportation. When you make these decisions, I hope you're thinking about everyone that's involved, the children, the neighborhood, and the students. One time when I was working in the garden, a parent came up to me, an expecting mother, and she said to me, "Are you Miss Shelton?" And I said, "Yes." And she says, after talking to her about 15 minutes, she asked me, "Are you going to be there in the next 5 years?" I said, "Hopefully." I'm hoping, standing before you now, that you see my face and I see yours, and you listen to everyone that is here, that you rethink your decision, because it's not too late. I have that one hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton. Good evening and welcome to the new members of the school board. I thank you all in advance for your service. My name is Liz Bolton, and I'm here again as your constituent, a taxpayer of Alexandria, and a Jefferson Houston parent to ask, though, not only for your service, but for your leadership. The last time I was here, I asked you to share the equity metrics that you would use to make this decision to close the elementary program at Jefferson Houston. I asked for a prioritization of criteria and a timeline of engagement for how we could give feedback since the solution had suddenly been proposed. Instead, an outgoing board member changed the motion from the dais to be a clear directive. End elementary school at Jefferson Houston. It's okay, you told us. Closing an elementary school is just like that one time we delayed the delivery of a field. That we should see how our sacrifice will serve the greater good. I've spent the last 6 weeks studying the information you have shared publicly to see how in the world closing a majority Black walkable Title I school was in the interest of the greater good. I still cannot find any evidence that this is a good plan. To the contrary, I only grow more and more alarmed by this decision and what it means for our ability as a city to grow and to deliver the education our residents deserve. I recently worked on a controversial issue in the city. Every day, I was pummeled by relentless questions from the press, from the community, from people who were sure they knew how to do my job better than me. Some of these questions were in bad faith, but many more of them came out of real concern and a desire to understand. Early on, I would come home from the endless questions and community meetings, and I'd say to my husband and son, they're here tonight, "I'm nobody. What am I doing here? I'm nobody. Why is everyone demanding so much of me and accusing me of things that are unfair and untrue?" But about halfway through this engagement, I realized I'm not nobody. Saying I'm nobody is just my brain's way of protecting myself, yes, but also of letting me off the hook. The reality, of course, that everyone around me could see was that I was very much in a position of power. I had access to decision makers, I was in rooms where conversations were happening, and I could ask the questions that needed to be asked to make sure this outcome that we were exploring brought the greatest good and the least harm possible to Alexandria. I'm not nobody. It is my duty to ask those questions on behalf of my community and to explain what the answers mean. I've been shocked by the way the board talks about this decision. I've heard directly and indirectly from several of you that this is council's problem to fix or the city manager's fault, and that is not true. It is misleading not to acknowledge that while council appropriates how much money you have full authority on how you spend that money. You do have power. I'll grant it may not be great power, but it nonetheless comes with responsibility. Every single one of you sitting on that dais has the power to make this decision, to ignore its warning signs and ram it through. But you also have the power to pick your head up out of the relentless pummeling of the day-to-day, and it is relentless, and say, blank slate, new beginning, what are the real problems, and how can we solve them? Thank you.
Christian Bentley. Christian Bentley.
Oh, no.
Oh,
What's
they're not
the
here?
name?
Okay, thank you.
Tamesha.
Tomashia.
Yes, Tamesha.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good evening. My name is Tamesha Cornicher. Thank you all so much for being here and taking the time to listen to all of us. I don't have written words because I knew that everyone would say what I would want to say, and so I come to echo their sentiments. But I have children in different grades. So I have a 9th grader at Minnie Howard, 7th and 5th grader at Patrick Henry. And so I come today to talk on a couple of topics, one of them being the safety at the high school. I know that there were some decisions that had to be made when things happened right before winter break, but I was hoping that there would be more support for our students. They are our future. They are still children. And even though there was law enforcement involved, I would hope that we look at them as an opportunity to improve our efforts, to be more intentional, to build them up to be successful, and to see them as potential future school board members. From our 7th grade, my 7th grader and 5th grader, I would like to hope that with Patrick Henry remaining K through 8, with Jefferson Houston remaining K through 8, you can see the benefits of that opportunity. I hope that you can revisit your decision with the conversion and really take into consideration the voices of the families and the voices of the teachers today. I am by heart, by nature, a parent advocate, and I raise my voice not just for my children, not just for myself, but for my community. There is a big need for these schools to stay the same, and I hope that a dollar does not make your decision. I hope that we can find a way to find some space in the community where I see a lot of abandoned buildings, whether they belong to ACPS or not. I'm sure there's a relationship there with the city where we can find some space to build or convert a space for a middle school or more of an elementary school so that our overcrowding issues can be addressed. As well as when we speak about walkability, you know, we're doing walk-in tours with the city right now. I think that should be taken into consideration as well. As a parent who didn't have a vehicle for some time, it was much more feasible for me to walk over to the school if my child was sick, to walk my kids to school, knowing that they were close by if I ever needed to get to them. I am grateful for all that you do. I know that this is not easy work, especially sitting there listening to a lot of aggression coming your way. Again, I thank you, but I do stand in solidarity with the Jefferson Houston community, and I'm sure a lot of our Patrick Henry families would feel the same. Thank you.
Excuse me. Our next speaker is Marva Frazier, who's speaking virtually.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we could hear you.
My name is Marva Frazier, and I have a son at JH. Almost 1.5 years ago, this board made a decision to place our head of school and our academic principal on leave. Since then, you have failed to replace our head of school, and instead you've hired a part-time principal, which has been problematic. Might I add that while JH lost 2 of their principals behind a pre-K student leaving the school that was not even under their purview, Patrick Henry has lost 2 6th graders and nothing has happened to their principal. This one bad decision of removing our principal and leaving us with a leadership gap for over a year has set our school back, a school that happens to educate the most vulnerable kids with the greatest need in our city. This major mistake made by the board, coupled with your most recent recommendation to convert our school to a middle school, has made it clear to me that the board has little to no interest in caring for the students at JH. It was stated at the last meeting that making decisions such as deciding which school to convert was a hard decision. Well, from my eyes, it looked pretty easy. You selected option 5, which was not even one of the top options under consideration. You chose option 5, although the contractor stated that option 5 may not even solve the problem with overcrowding in our middle schools. Let's be honest, you chose option 5 because it was the cheapest option. But did you consider that the kids you're opting to bus to surrounding schools are the most fragile kids in the area? You take away their school and you weaken our community. You take away the Title I benefits and you remove resources for these students' families. What will you do about the special need elementary students? How will you replace the support provided to these students that look like several of you on the board? Cheaper options doesn't necessarily equate to the best option. This decision was simply not thought out, nor was it discussed or shared with JH families. How about you focus on the immediate need of overcrowding in the middle schools and further educate yourselves on the outlook of student population over the next 10 years so that you can make a more informed decision? Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. As a reminder, if you wish to speak or submit written public comments, please visit the school board meetings webpage to sign up by noon on Wednesday prior to the next meeting, and